everyone, welcome to the lecture series of operating systems. Before going to the today's contents, let us see what are the topics we have discussed in the last video. So that is about the recap, the last topics we have discussed. So now let us see what are we going to study in this session. Today we are going to learn about the process operations, which includes process creation and process termination. Now let us see what are the actual operations that can be done on a process. When you want to execute a process in a system, in order to execute a process, the process first must be created, and then the operating system must provide some mechanism in order to create that process and also in order to terminate that process. Okay, so these two are considered as the main operations on a process, whereas there are several operations that can be performed on a process, like deleting a process or suspending a process when it requires an IO operation, and resuming the process that have completed its IO operation, cloning a process, that is creating the same exact copy of the process that is being executed in the CPU, and then inter-process communication, that is providing the communication between two processes which are being executed in your CPU. And the last operation is the synchronization. So synchronization in the sense allowing two processes to wait for other process to complete its execution. So we will see all these topics in next videos. So coming to the first operation, that is process creation. So process creation, in general, normal systems, there should be some way in order to create a process. Okay, so first let us see, before seeing how to create a process, let us see what are the situations that occur for creating a process. So for this we have four events to be occurred, or four situations where a process can be created. So the first process is the system initialization. So right from the first lecture of this videos, we are being discussing that in order to execute a program, a process must be created. So whatever you are going to see on the monitor, that should be get executed in your CPU. Okay, so if you consider, whenever you power on a system, you will be able to see a message like starting Windows on your computer. So that is the first process which will be created when you power on your computer, and that process is called the booting process. So which will tell the computer what are the actual operating system files that has to be loaded in order to make user to interact with the computer easily. So that is the first situation where a process will be created, that is system initialization. And second, we have execution of a process creations by system calls or by a running process. Okay, so when you are executing a process, when you have already started executing a process, you can create one more process, a new process, by executing some system calls provided by the operating system, which will result in creation of a new process, and that new process is called child process. We'll see it in detail in next slides. And third we have is the user request to create a new process. So user may explicitly request the computer or request the operating system in order to create a new process. Say for example, if you are trying to open a browser, then you are requesting your operating system to create a process for executing that web browser application. Okay, if you want to open a music file, so you are explicitly trying to create a music process. Okay, and the fourth situation where we can create a process is initializing a batch job. So in batch operating systems, whenever the jobs all are being received from the users, these jobs are collected and divided into different groups called batches, and these batches will be executed by the CPU. So when this batch is being executed by the CPU, a process will be created. So these are the four situations when a process can be created in your operating system. And during the execution of a process may create several new processes. Say for example, you are writing a program which includes functions. So you all are aware of user-defined functions, right? So in that case, if you are writing user-defined functions in a separate file, say for example, you have written a program and you are trying to write the user-defined functions in a separate file, the actual code of the functions in separate file, and you are calling those functions in your actual program. So in that case, when you are executing your main program, whenever you are trying to call a function, that particular program file which consists of the actual code of your function will start execution. So since it is a separate program, when it comes for execution, it becomes a new process. Okay. So in this example, the program or the main program which you are being executing first will become the parent process, and the other program, which the second process which have been started executing because of the function call you have made in this first program, will become the child process of this program. Okay, so the process which creates a new process is called a parent process, whereas the new process which has been created by the parent is called a child process. Okay, and each of this child process can create one more child process. Likewise, a tree of structure can be formed by creating new processes. Okay, and each of the child process created by a parent process can be identified by the operating system with the ID number, identification number, and that identification number is called the process identifier, or in short we call it as PID, process ID. So this PID is a unique value for each process in the system, and it can be used as an index to access various attributes of a process within the kernel. So we have discussed various attributes like program counter. What all the details regarding a process will be present in the process control block. So each and every process control block can be identified by using this process ID. And then you can observe the tree structure of processes which are formed in the Unix operating system. So Linux is one of the version of your Unix operating system. So in Linux, this type of tree structure is followed for creating a process. So if you observe, when you are working with programs in your lab using Putty software, you will not be able to run a program, or you will not be able to do some operations without logging into that system, right? So in the same way, in Linux operating system, the first process that is going to run is the init process. You can consider this init process as the process which runs from starting of the point, or starting when your operating system files are loaded, to the end. This init process will contain the process ID 1. Since it is the first process created, it contains the process ID 1. So based on this, after starting execution of this process, the remaining processes will be created as its childs. If you observe, without logging into the Putty environment, you cannot even create a folder. So for that purpose, we have, in order to make a user to log in into that system, Linux operating system, we have a login process, and it consists of the process ID. Here you can see 8415. Okay. In the same way, after you logging into the system, you will be able to see the dollar prompt on the screen, right? So that is the shell prompt which is provided to you by the Linux operating system. So in order to provide you that shell prompt, the user command line interface, a process that is being run in Linux operating system is the bash process. So bash is a shell which provides you the command line interface for the user. So after seeing the dollar symbol, then you will be trying to, if you want to create a program, you will be using a VI editor, right? So in the same way, Emacs is one of the editor which is provided by the bash shell, so which will allow you to create or write the text and program files. And then we have the next child of init process is the kthread process, which in turn have two child processes, khelper and pdflush. Okay, so kthread is responsible for allocating and deallocating resources for the processes, and SSHD is a secure shell, which is the process used in order to provide security for the users who are logging in into the operating system. And the child process, whatever, how many child process ever the process may create, each and every child process that is created will need a certain resources. Like in order to execute the child process, it needs CPU time. In order to execute the process, it needs some memory. In order to store the data, it needs some files. To take input or produce output, it needs some I/O devices. So in order to accomplish its task, a child process also needs all these resources. Okay, so these resources can be obtained by the child process directly from the operating system, or it may be constrained as a subset of the resources given to the parent process. So the same resources which are allocated for parent process can be allocated to child, or a separate resources can be allocated to the child process. Okay, so restricting a child to a subset of parent process resources prevents any process from overloading. That is, if we consider that a child process should only get the subset of resources given by the parent process, then we can restrict a process, or then we can eliminate a process being overloading with other process data. And next we have two concepts that have to be remembered while creating a new process. So when a process creates a new process, there are two possibilities in its execution. Okay, so first part is regarding the execution. So in execution, both the parent and child process may execute simultaneously, concurrently. At the same time, both parent and child process can execute. And the other case is, the parent will wait until the child process executes, and whenever the child exits, the parent resumes its execution. This is the case where you can remember a function call. So whenever you are trying to call a function from your program, the program control will stop its execution, stop the flow of execution, and go for executing the actual function definition. So here you can think of that the program or the sequence of instructions which are going to call a function will wait. The next instruction that has to be executed after the function call will wait until the function execution completes. So that is the example for your second case. And coming to the allocation of memory for a child process, there are two possibilities here. One is, if the parent and child processes are duplicates of each other, that is, however the parent process is present, the same and exact Xerox copy of the child is made, then it will be allocated the same address space as that of the parent process. Okay, if the child is other process, if the child is new process that say for example like a simple function call present in some other file, then that such kind of child can be allocated a separate memory address. Now let us see the code in Unix operating system. How can we create a child process using the parent process? So first is the header file. You can see here, that is the types.h header file. So we are discussing that a process will be identified by the operating system using the process ID. So the data type of your process ID is PID_T. So like how we have the int, float and char data types, in the same way a process ID will have a data type in order to store the ID, and that is PID underscore T. So in order to make use of that, we are including the types.h header file and stdio.h for IO operations, and unistd.h is a header file which consists of a system call which is used to create a child process. So here we are going to use a system call in Unix. In order to create a child process, we will make use of a system call called fork, and this fork is present, the actual functionality of this fork is present in unistd.h. So coming into the program here, in order to, the main theme here is to create a child process. So to create a child process, we have fork system call. So as soon as a child process is created, the process will be allocated an ID. So to store that ID, we have the process ID type with variable name PID. And then if you observe here, first thing we have to do is the creating child process. So to create child process, we have called a fork system call. So whenever you call a fork system call, it will return three types of values. One is 0, positive and negative. So if it is 0, it indicates the child process has been created, and after creating the child process, the parent is still continuing its execution. If 0, child is created but parent is being executed. If the fork system call returns a positive value, that it indicates the parent process, the child process has been created and the parent process is waiting for its child to complete its execution. And if it is less than 0, if it is a negative value, then we can consider an error has been occurred in creating the child process, so that the error can be notified with the parent, notified to the user. So that you can observe in the code. So first, if condition is checking what is the value that was returned by the fork system call. If it is less than 0, it indicates an error message, an error in creating a child, and the error message can be returned to the user by using the stderr. So here stderr is a file which consists of number of errors and their error codes. So this error code will be returned to the user. So along with the error code, we are returning fork failed message to the user. And next, if it is successfully created and returns 0, then it indicates the child process is created. So in order, it indicates the child process is created but the parent is being executed. So in order to start the child process in order to make the child process to start its execution, we make use of one more system call called execlp. So exec is the main system call which will consist of different versions, and execlp is one of the version of exec. So exec system call is used to remove all the memory data regarding the parent process from the CPU, and it replaces the child process data on the CPU for execution. Okay, so that the child process will start its execution. And the last, if it is going to return a positive value, then the parent process will wait until the child process completes its execution. So that waiting is done by using the wait system call. Okay, so this is the way how we are going to implement to create a process in Unix operating system using fork system. So what all we have done in the program can be visualized in this diagram. So if you observe, the parent process will execute the fork system call, which will return the process ID along with the process ID. If that process ID is greater than 0, the parent will wait. If it is equal to 0, the child will start its execution. So after completing the child's execution, the parent will be notified by using the wait system call that the child execution has been completed. So once the wait system call has been executed, the parent continues its execution. And then that is about the process creation. Now we'll go with the process termination. So whatever the process is created should have an end point. That is, at some point the created process should get terminated. Okay, so the operating system will delete it by using the exit system call. So at that point, the process may return a status value to its parent. So whenever if you are trying to terminate a child process, the child process status is returned to the parent through wait system call. Okay, and all the resources of that terminating child process, including the memory, files, and IO devices, are deallocated by the operating system. And then a process can cause termination of other process via an appropriate system call. So, in order to terminate a process, there should be some system call executed by the operating system. Usually, such system call can be invoked or can be executed only by the parent process of that child. Okay, so no other process is allowed to terminate a child of other parent. Okay, a parent needs to know, in order to terminate the child, a parent needs to know each and every detail of that child process. Thus, when one process wants to create a new process, the identity or the process ID of that child process is passed to the parent. And a parent may terminate its execution of one of its children for number of reasons. One is if the child has exceeded the resources allocated to it. Say for example, a child has been allocated a 1 MB of memory. But if it is using more than 1 MB, the child process can be terminated by the parent process. And if the task assigned to the child process is of no use. So even if the result has been generated before the child has been executed, then a parent may terminate the child process. And the last topic or the last reason we have is if the parent is exiting before the child completes, if the parent process exits, the operating system will not allow the child process to continue its execution. And this type of termination of a child process by the operating system is known as cascading termination. And in Linux and Unix operating systems, we can terminate a process by using the exit system call, providing the status of that child process. Usually, exit system call, if the status of the exit system call is 1, it indicates the child process have terminated successfully. Under the normal termination, the exit system call may be called directly by the programmer itself, or whenever we make use of a return statement in our program, the operating system will in background call this exit system call to terminate the process. So a parent process will wait until the termination of the child process by using or by executing the wait system call. So this wait system call, as we have discussed, the wait system call should be passed the status of the child process. So previous slide we have seen exit of 1. So 1 in the sense that the status of that 1 will be passed to the wait system call. So here you can see how the wait system call receives the status from the child process. So the reference of that variable is passed to the wait system call. So that is about the process termination. And two more concepts which we have to remember while executing this parent-child process is when a process is terminated, but when a process has been terminated, we are being discussing that its status must be notified by the parent process through the wait system call. So if the parent process is not executing the wait system call, even if the child process terminates, then that terminated child process is called zombie process. Okay, so after some time, if the parent process executes the wait system call, this zombie process can be terminated. Okay, and second is orphan process. So whenever a parent process terminates, so it did not execute a wait system call and it terminated. So if even if the child is being executed, then such child process are called orphan process. A child process which does not have a parent process is called orphan process. So in order to kill such orphan process, your operating system will execute a wait system called frequently. So in case of Unix, init is the parent or root process of all the process, the init process will frequently execute the wait system calls in order to collect all these orphan process and terminate them. So that is about the process, and thank you for watching. In next video, we'll see about the inter-process communication.